Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, a podcast dedicated to self-development, self-improvement, and helping you achieve the goals that you've laid forth in your life. I'm your podcast host, Brandon Davis, and in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the concept of stop being prepared. That's right, stop being prepared. And I want to dive into that a little bit more, and hopefully my words today can give you a couple golden nuggets on how you could start preparing less inside of your life. So guys, with all that being said, let's jump into today's episode. So before I go full force on the episode today, I want to offer a little bit of framework on why I think it's important to not be so prepared. And I want to offer this in a practical standpoint and recognize the value of being prepared first. I was a Boy Scout in the Boy Scout model. I was an Eagle Scout, in fact. In the Boy Scout motto, it was be prepared, right? Be prepared with your equipment. Be prepared with your life. Be prepared with everything that you had to go on your next adventure. Be prepared with literally anything, right? And so as I was a Boy Scout, that's what I was told 24/7. Be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. As I continue inside of my life, people still tell me, be prepared. Now, as mentioned in many other previous episodes, I'm a college student. I have to be prepared in my assignments. I have to be prepared on what I'm going to do this week, how I'm going to get everything done that I need to. I'm a big fan of scheduling and being prepared on every minute detail that I might have inside of my life on how I get something accomplished. But for the value of today's episode, I want to focus on the concept of being less prepared. And here's the reason why I want to jump into this. So many times inside of our lives, we fear the concept of not being ready. Let's take, for example, the concept of starting your own business. You may spend years and decades trying to come up with the right business for you. For an example, you could take, say, you're trying to go and clean people's roofs. You scrape the moss off of them. You add nice little cleaner so it makes it look all sparkly and fresh. Homeowners love it, right? People pay good money to go and have somebody come and clean their roof. But in some instances, you might be so afraid to start that business. I don't know what product to use. I don't know how I'm going to attract new customers. I don't understand how I'm going to even get started. I don't know where I'm going to get my first clients from, nor my employees. Do I have enough money to do this? Sometimes we start overthinking so much inside of our head. We are over preparing ourselves, right? And so let me offer another example. Say you go out and one day you notice somebody's roof and it is completely disgusting. You simply knock on their door and say, hey, I'd love to clean off your roof for you for $100. You may have zero experience inside of that field. You may have zero expertise. You may have zero practice. You may have never cleaned a roof once inside of your life. But what did you do that was so important? You went out there, despite not being directly prepared, you noticed a problem and you went and knocked on somebody's door and you offered a solution. Whether or not they hired you, let's say, for example, they did hire you. You get up on the side of the roof, you have a broom, you maybe have a hose, you're kind of just winging the entire thing. What do you learn from that experience? Now, once again, somebody might argue, okay, well, that's not being honest or fair because somebody's paying you $100 and you have no idea what you're doing. So maybe for the first couple times you knock on somebody's door who has a bad roof and you say, hey, I'm starting a new business where I go and clean people's roofs. I saw that yours is a little old and a little dusty. Can I go up there and clean yours completely free? Maybe that's one way you justify it, right? The point I'm trying to get at is so many times we're so afraid to just get started that we overthink the entire process and we never get started. There's this quote I heard, and I've mentioned this a couple times on the podcast before, but it's the biggest thing that we should be afraid of inside of our lives is saying, I will start tomorrow. Because what's going to happen when tomorrow rolls around? You're going to say once again, I will start tomorrow. And so being prepared goes along that same concept. If you're over preparing, you're generally overthinking. If you're sitting there worrying about what's going to happen next or how do I get started, you're not going to get the job done ever. I'm not saying once again that it's bad to prepare. Once again, I'm an Eagle Scout, and I believe in being prepared, but sometimes we overthink things. We never even get started just because we're afraid to fail. And so there's this little process that I kind of live by when I'm either starting a business, trying to get into, create a new relationship, whether I'm meeting new people, right? It's this concept of learning to fail and learning to love to fail. And this is kind of my process through it. It goes, I start something. So as a practical example, once again, I'll use my podcast for an example. I started my podcast. How did I get started on my podcast? I was listening to somebody else's one day and thought it would be really cool to start a podcast that focuses on helping other people improve their lives through areas of self-development. That was kind of my thought process. That's where I started. And so I listened to that podcast, say it was a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I put it on my Instagram saying, hey guys, I'm releasing an episode of my new podcast called Get Over Yourself this Friday. That's as far as I'd gone. I told myself I was going to do it, and I put something online where I could have people make sure that I was going to do it. I told them I was going to, and so that way I had to launch something. Even if it was the bare minimum, it was awful. And as if you can go back and listen to that first episode, it really was awful. But I loved it because I started it. So here comes that Friday. I started the podcast, and we just kept rolling on. So number 1 on the key action items is to start. Number 2 is to learn. After I started the podcast, I began learning things very quickly. I remember the first episode I was making, it took me hours. I think the first episode was like 15 minutes long. I had this long script out. I wasn't doing video at the time, so I could kind of just, if you're watching me right now, I was just looking at a paper and I was reading it kind of line from line. I was freaked the heck out. I had no idea how to manage a podcast, how the audio would sound, how to edit it all, how to post it even, but I recorded it. I got in there and I learned from that experience just little minute details. And what did I do after I started and learned? Going to action item number 3, the key takeaway, I failed. I failed so many times. The listeners I had right at the beginning of the podcast, it was simply friends and family who were curious on what I was doing. I got some honest feedback from a lot of people. Hey, your audio sounds horrible. I still get a lot of feedback nowadays. Hey, this needs to change. You messed up on how you said this word. You asked a guest a dumb question. You'd be amazed about the honest feedback I get, which some people might get distraught by, but I am fueled by it. I love getting honest feedback so I can improve it. And so what did I do? I started, I learned, and then I failed. What did I do after I failed? I learned some more. I continued learning from those failures. I learned from the feedback other people gave me. I learned from my own trial and error on how to edit, how to upload a podcast, how to get these attention grabbing titles, how to speak more clearly into a microphone, how to get better microphones. Every day I'm constantly learning. And I guarantee a year from now, if you're listening to this later in the future, right now it is currently March 20th of 2023. If you're listening to this podcast way down the road, I guarantee I've already changed and learned so many different things from when I'm currently uploading this video. So it's start, learn, fail, learn, improve is next. So I learned some more. I'm learning constantly every single day on how to make this podcast better, and now I'm going to improve it. If you're not learning something to simply improve it later on down the road, in my opinion, there's no point in learning it in the first place. You learn to improve. Let's take an example going directly towards sports. Why do you have practices rather than games? Say you're on a basketball team. Why do you have basketball practice 5 days a week to have a game every other week? It's so you can learn and improve on the mistakes that you made. You started playing basketball. You learned how to play basketball. You failed playing basketball. You learned a little bit better, and you began improving it from there. Every single day between your dribbling, your shooting, your defense, these small little details that you're trying to get better at inside of your game, you're learning and then you're improving. You're learning, then you're improving. You learned what you did wrong. You learned that you can't set a moving screen. You learned that you probably shouldn't shoot a three-pointer from half court. You learned all these little details about the game. Then you start improving them. You get closer when you shoot. You set your feet and you fully plant them before you set a screen. You learn and you improve. And lastly, inside of this key action item takeaway that you can implement inside of your life is you start again. So once again, wrapping them all up, you start, you learn, you fail, you learn some more, you improve from that learning, and then you start all over again. Once again, this can be applied to so many different areas inside of your life. Business, it can be applied to relationships, it can be applied to schooling, even if you're working for somebody else. You start a project, you learn from it, you fail at the project, you learn about how you failed from that, you improve it, and then you start again. And I really want to highlight this because, once again, being prepared in this instance is something so many people want to do inside of their life. Being prepared means that you're trustworthy. Being prepared shows somebody that you're capable of doing something. It shows that you're on time. It shows that you're ready. It shows that you're eager to learn. Being prepared shows a lot about someone's character. And 9 times out of 10, I would say being prepared is what you need to do every single day, no matter what you're doing. But out of this one case of the 10, I want to argue to you that being prepared is stopping you from achieving your full potential. Once again, you are over worrying. You're thinking way too hard about whatever it is you're trying to do, and you're not doing it because you're over prepared. You need to get to, if this is your life right now where you need to get to a certain level, you have to reach level 100 before you can get anything started. Why don't you start at level 1? You learn from it. You fail. You learn from the failure. You improve, and you start over again. I promise you guys, whatever you're trying to get done inside of your life, if you could follow those steps and stop worrying about how prepared you are, so much will change inside of your life. If you're trying to wake up earlier, you can implement this exact strategy and start waking up earlier. Maybe you wake up at 8 o'clock every day and you're trying to get to 5 o'clock in the morning for whatever reason it may be. You start, you learn about how your body works and how much sleep you need and when you need to appropriately go to bed. You fail a couple times, you tried to get up at 5, but your alarm went off and you got up at 8 again. Then you learn from that. How can I wake up a little bit earlier? And then you start implementing, you start improving and adding these small little routines inside of your life so you can get up earlier. Then you start again and again and again. Guys, the strategy of being less prepared will fuel you to get more done inside of your life. Once again, I'm not saying on these first attempts it's going to go perfect. Odds are the less prepared you are, actually, the reality is the less prepared you are, the less likely it's going to succeed. But whatever you're trying to work on right now, that is my challenge for you. Succeed less right now, but just start so you can learn. I promise you in the long run, if you just are less prepared now, but you start it, you're going to be more prepared in the future. It's kind of an adverse effect, but start right now, no matter how unprepared you are, and eventually you'll learn from it and improve and learn and improve and start again and again and again. And you will eventually be prepared exactly to the level that you need to be in order to accomplish whatever it is inside of your life. So guys, that's what I have for you in today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. If you enjoyed anything I mentioned, make sure to go give me a positive review. That's how I blast out this podcast to so many more people. And if you know somebody who can benefit from being unprepared inside of their life, feel free to send this to them. And here's the caution right now. They're not sending it to you if you're listening to this episode from somebody who sent it to you. They're not sending it in a bad way. They're trying to help you improve. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And just remember, it'll all be okay. Just take a step back and stop being so prepared inside of your life.